Right, so if Keir Starmer were looking for a way to end his political career with a bang, to actually do something interesting once in his life, as that would be, he might have just found it, in the form of a welfare axe aimed squarely at the poor, the sick, and the disabled. Forget fighting the Tories, forget fighting Reform UK. Starmer's decided to borrow their policies, make them even worse, wrap them in Labour red, and march them through Parliament with all the charm of a cold audit. But this time the numbers don't lie, and neither do the growing ranks of Labour MPs apparently prepared to torpedo his draconian legislation, putting pen to paper to show their intent. When your welfare bill is too harsh for your own party, ends up drawing praise from the likes of Kebby Badenoch, and triggers talk of massive rebellion, you don't have a political strategy, you've got a ticking time bomb. Starmer could be toast before he's even been in power for a year, despite the size of his majority. And it's his own incompetence, thuggishness, and bullying that will bring him down, it seems. Unless he does as all cowards and bullies do in the end, and run away from holding the vote at all. Right, so Keir Starmer's leadership is now apparently teetering on the brink of collapse, no less. It's got that bad for him. It's got nothing to do because of Tory attacks or Reform UK attacks or external pressures acting upon him that he's got no control over, but due to his own catastrophic miscalculation, pushing his own party too far with his right-wing Tory-style governance, combined with demands for absolute obedience from his MPs, selected not to be loyal to the constituents who elected them, of course, but to him, and only him, to do as he says. Proposed assault on Britain's poorest and most vulnerable under the guise of welfare reform. His government's intent to slash universal credit, UC, and personal independence payment, PIP, is not just a policy misstep, it's a political and moral calamity for him and a catastrophic blow to the poorest paid and disabled, many of whom will be in work during a cost of living crisis they will already be struggling with on top of their additional needs. This is the action of a craven bully, punching down on those much weaker and much more vulnerable. I can kind of see why he's so fond of Israel, having just said that, can't you? But these proposed cuts are so deeply unjust and economically stupid that they have incited a full-scale rebellion within Labour, prompting a growing number of MPs to back a reasoned amendment designed to destroy the bill outright. As of time of writing, 134 Labour MPs have signed on to this, a number seemingly increasing by the day. And each time Starmer threatens them with deselection or even a general election, knowing as he does how badly he'd lose it. Starmer's proposed cuts target the very people Labour is supposed to protect. Universal credit and PIP are not luxuries, they're lifelines for ordinary working class people. Universal credit tops up the incomes of the lowest paid workers, and PIP enables disabled individuals to live with dignity and independence, whether they are able to work or not, and quite often it is the means by which they access work. But these cuts will not distinguish between the employed and the unemployed, the temporarily ill or the permanently disabled. Everyone will be affected. The cruelty is staggering. As many as 800,000 people stand to lose their benefits either partially or entirely. Some of the worst off and most disabled people and disadvantaged people in this country. This includes individuals so sick or disabled they cannot wash or dress themselves. Such are the reforms being proposed to the PIP process. It really is no wonder, as craven as many MPs can be, that this size of rebellion is happening in Labour ranks, led as they are by the very worst elements of their own right wing. Many rights organisations have condemned the proposed changes, stating they will severely harm people with disabilities. The government's proposal to revise PIP assessments, especially by tightening the scoring system, is a deliberate attempt to disqualify people who clearly need support. It's simply a numbers game to them. It's a numbers game to this government who've decided the numbers are just too high. But they are more than numbers. They are people with real health issues who got through the horrendous PIP process as it already is, at least once before, to get help they were clearly found to qualify for. It is a calculated attack on the most marginalised members of society. These are real people behind these statistics, families who already struggle to make ends meet, carers who gave up work and rely on the benefits they get as a result of their partner being on PIP to provide full-time support, or the person they care for is not necessarily a partner, to provide that full-time support, who could be forced to then choose between caring in even further poverty or working and leaving loved ones to end up fending for themselves, leaving the NHS to pick up the pieces. Billions that the carers save the NHS each year. Workers in low-wage jobs who depend on UC just to survive and get by, no longer being able to. Slashing these payments will not only plunge these individuals into further hardship, but it will deepen existing inequalities on disability rights and income support already hammered after the last 14 years of Tory rule. The justification offered by ministers that these cuts are necessary to balance the books is transparently hollow. Every single penny received through UC and PIP is spent back into the economy. These are not funds hoarded offshore or squirreled away in investment portfolios. This is money needed simply to make ends meet and to get by and access the facilities that they need. These are payments to keep food on tables, lights on, and medicine within reach. Cutting this money will devastate local economies, increase poverty, and expand the burden on an already overwhelmed NHS and social care system. The added expense to all of us that we would have to pick up the tab for via the public purse is potentially massive. Independent economists and analysts have underlined that these cuts make no economic sense at all. The multiplier effect of welfare spending, particularly targeted at low-income and disabled groups, far exceeds the spending and the savings from austerity measures. For every pound cut, a larger pound, if you like, is lost in consumer spending, economic growth, and tax receipts. Meanwhile, Starmer has pledged to raise defence spending to 5% of GDP by 2035, amounting to 16 times the amount he seeks to save through welfare cuts. You can find that money. Amongst these expenditures includes 12 new jets, apparently, that are capable of delivering nuclear bombs, because of course we need those, don't we? It's an absurd investment in completely unusable weapons we dare never use, while claiming there is no money for the disabled. It's a grotesque set of priorities, and this is a conundrum that rebel Labour MPs cannot square a round hole over. Defence spending on an unnecessary ideological scale and basis serves no peacetime purpose at all. We're not under threat here on the UK homeland. It represents a staggering misallocation of national resources, and also Starmer can play soldier, obsessed with being a wartime leader when we aren't at war. This Labour rebellion is no fringe protest, it's a full-on revolt. The reasoned amendment, backed by 134 MPs even, is a very powerful tool. It allows MPs to reject the entire bill on the basis of its core principles, not just the details of it. At the heart of the rebellion are two non-negotiable demands: a full impact assessment of the proposed PIP changes, because despite the government desperately wanting to cut PIP, they haven't bothered to check how many people will be affected and how badly by that, and revision of the scoring system, some movement in those proposals to prevent unjust disqualifications. And you imagine people being unable to wash or get dressed would count as such, wouldn't you? Doesn't seem unreasonable to me. A full impact assessment will lay bare the devastating consequences of these reforms, while the scoring system, the changes to it, would allow Parliament to ensure that PIP assessments remain fair, evidence-based and humane. Without these changes, the bill amounts to a blanket attack on the disabled and their carers. The rebellion grows. The threats from Starmer's leadership have intensified, though. MPs have been told that this will be a de facto vote of confidence in the Prime Minister. Starmer has allegedly warned of deselections for those who defy him. Yet these threats have backfired. Upon being warned this could bring the government down and topple Starmer, the number of rebels grew from 108 to 127, and now it stands at 134. For some of them, it seems to be an incentive. As much as so many of us cannot abide Starmer, it seems the same can be said amongst a lot of his MPs now, and let's face it, he rigged an awful lot of selections. A lot of these people were his picks. Some insiders suggest it could be as high as 170 rebels, including those privately mooting voting the bill down, but not enough to actually put their names to it. More than enough, way more than enough to destroy the bill, even with a Labour majority the size that Starmer has, if you factor in opposition parties voting it down as well. The optics of this legislation cannot be worse in another respect too. Kemi Badenoch, the equally incompetent, deficient leader of the Tories, has openly offered to support the bill in exchange for tax cuts and even deeper welfare reductions. Her rationale being the bill doesn't go far enough in its cuts. That the Tories under her would rescue a Labour Prime Minister, though, is not much of a show of unity for the common good, is it? It's a glaring indictment of how far Labour has fallen under Starmer. And obviously the optics of his legislation only passing with Tory votes would be horrendous. Labour ministers like Rachel Reeves, Little Miss will be tougher on benefits than the Tories, are echoing Conservative talking points and trying to talk around the rebels. Reeves has reportedly warned that rejecting the cuts would devastate the government, ignoring the irony that a government so widely unpopular, Labour holding just a 16% approval rating at this moment in time, might be devastated by this when, frankly, she should be looking in the mirror about that. Starmer's already lost one whip, Vicky Foxcroft, and more front-bench resignations are actually expected if this vote pushes ahead next week. London's Labour Mayor Sadiq Khan has also now publicly condemned the bill, further embarrassing the Prime Minister. Speaker Lindsay Hoyle has, however. Well, perhaps he might be coming to Starmer's rescue because he's yet to decide whether to select this reasoned amendment, with rumours swirling that he may actually refuse it, which would be an abject display of spinelessness if ever there was one. It would trigger absolute outrage, and it would deepen the crisis both inside Parliament and outside of it too. Meanwhile, disability rights groups and charities are ramping up their campaigns, warning that the reforms will disproportionately harm children, with an estimated 50,000 kids at risk of falling further into poverty, as a result of these changes, making the cruelty aspect stand out all the more. The government's spin machine, meanwhile, turns out misleading statistics. They claim that 1,000 people a day are claiming PIP. This figure, even if it's accurate, undermines their case completely because it proves people are successfully navigating an already tortuous system to prove they desperately need help, and assessment is finding in their favour. It suggests that need is growing, not shrinking, and that existing assessments are already too strict, so an impact assessment would again be a very good idea to find out why that is, and perhaps address some of the underlying causes, rather than just punish people who already have it harder than most, for one reason or another, for daring to have additional needs, or being in a low-paid job. One of the most damning accusations against the Starmer government is simply not listening, though. Not to the rebels, not to the charities, not to disability activists, not to economists either. All focuses on suppressing rebellion rather than responding to it and listening to the message. Meg Hillier, the Treasury Select Committee chair and a Labour MP, has herself joined the revolt, undermining the economic rationale, or lack of it, behind this bill, as the optics of this rebellion show. Worse still are reports that Liz Kendall is exploring the possibility of means testing PIP on top of all of this. A policy so cruel even Tory governments have shied away from considering it. This would only inflame tensions even further and confirm fears that Starmer's Labour is adopting policies to the right of the Conservative Party to be even more Tory than the Tory Party, aping Reform UK, running on their coattails to become as hard right as they are, but no reason whatsoever, no logic behind it at all. It clearly isn't winning them support, it is losing them support. Kendall's justification that the government has no choice is belied by the existence of better alternatives, though. There are choices to be made. This is the choice Labour are making. Economists have repeatedly pointed out that a wealth tax could raise many times more than the projected savings from the PIP and UC cuts. These cuts are expected to bring in for the government, if you choose to talk about it in those terms, about £5 billion. But a wealth tax, £24 billion. It should be a no-brainer, but it's not. The Labour leadership has chosen political expediency over moral clarity and has decided to pick on the disabled in order to protect the donors. That's obviously how it looks like, isn't it? Recent local elections should have served as a wake-up call too. Defence spending wasn't a top concern for voters. Economic hardship was, yet Starmer remains fixated on his hawkish agendas, seemingly more concerned with NATO posturing and willy-waving whilst cosplaying as Robson Green rather than feeding hungry families or protecting disability rights to a reasonable standard of living. He's learnt nothing. He listens to nobody save his handlers, the likes of Morgan McSweeney. The electorate is growing increasingly tired of political leaders who promise change but just end up delivering more of the same. Starmer's failure to offer a genuine alternative to Tory cruelty is damaging his party's credibility and playing into the hands of the populist hard right of Nigel Farage's Reform UK band of Tory cast-offs. The parliamentary opposition is also growing. Jeremy Corbyn is set to present a parliamentary petition the day before the vote, demanding wealth taxes instead of benefit cuts. Disability activists have vowed to fight this bill to the end. One campaigner stated, "We will not give a single inch," and they shouldn't either. Their lives depend on it at the end of the day. This bill is not policy, it's persecution. Corbyn's intervention was largely symbolic, serves as a powerful reminder that there is an alternative, and the same can be said of the Green Party as well, who have been talking about wealth taxes. This has been their policy for years now. A government that taxes wealth instead of punishing the vulnerable is not only possible, it's absolutely necessary. This crisis has exposed Keir Starmer not as a unifying figure, nor as a leader, but as an authoritarian technocrat whose instinct is to punish the powerless whilst appeasing the powerful. He is the establishment's most loyal servant. He would rather cut from the disabled than tax the wealthy, threaten his own MPs rather than listen to them, and potentially may take support from Tories rather than admit error, because when does he ever do that? He's never ever wrong in his own head, and he never ever says sorry for anything. If this bill passes, it'll be on the back of Conservative votes with Labour rebels and the public in opposition. If it fails, it could spell the end of Starmer's leadership. Either way, it's bad news for him. The likeliest scenario is that Starmer will, of course, run away from the vote again. It was supposed to have been held a month ago, wasn't it? Because he's a coward. Whatever happens, one thing that won't change is that Starmer absolutely has to go one way or another. And here he has backed himself into a corner where there is no outcome that he comes out on top of. Where prosecution used to be his stock in trade, it's persecution these days. So it goes as he seeks to proscribe Palestine Action as a terror group for throwing paint over a couple of planes. But Starmer's prosecutor past has exposed his hypocrisy here too, having defended activists in the past in court and getting them off who did exactly the same thing. Get all the details of that story in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, for spreading the word and helping to support the channel at the very same time. All very much appreciated. Holding power to account for ordinary working class people. I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.